So with Deadpool set to be coming out in season 6 and Rogue supposed to be coming out sometime over the next week, a lot of people are speculating as to what roles exactly these characters might be. And it's kind of got me thinking that with the next handful of characters that NetEase releases, they're going to kind of be in between a rock and a hard place. And this is all due to the fact that there's an overwhelming amount of DPS. But let's talk about it. YouTube, what's going on, man? It's Father Dark here on a beautiful Monday morning. Hope everybody had a great weekend. It's currently snowing for us right now. I don't know about the rest of you all. I have heard that a lot of people have been getting a lot of snow. Hope y'all are staying warm and staying safe. But let's go ahead and get into the video. So first thing that I want to talk about is that we should be getting some type of information on Rogue here pretty soon. It's currently the 8th of December, and usually the seasons take place exactly a month from when the season was updated last. And you guys can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I do believe that last season started on, what, the 14th or something like that. Now, it's not always exactly a month. Sometimes they kind of change it to kind of make it to where the new season comes out closer to the end of the week. Sometime around that time. So it might be a couple of days before or after or something like that. I haven't actually looked at the calendar to see what the actual difference would be time-wise for that. But that's just usually how they kind of do it. This is all just speculation, though, so just take that with a grain of salt. Nonetheless, though, around this time is usually when we start getting some kind of information, like a dev talk where they kind of go over what changes they're going to make and what kind of events they might be having, a new map or anything like that they would be doing. And then also around that time is when we start getting a reveal trailer for the new character, which I know a lot of people are really anxious to see what they're going to do with Rogue. And then we also get like the actual gameplay trailer and stuff like that, and they'll kind of show us like what the alternative skin for the character that they're going to release is going to be. So with that being said, though, I would recommend that you all join our Discord. I'm going to leave a link for it in the description. The reason why is because that I always do a giveaway, which isn't affiliated with YouTube at all. This is strictly for the people that are, subscribers and stuff that are in the Discord. And I'm probably going to change it around this time. Instead of doing like a random number, I'll probably make it the person that is most active in the general chat or something. The people that are most active in the customs or something like that, leading up until the mid-season release or something like that. But I'm going to change it up this time because we do have a lot of people that they simply just join and they're just there only for when or whenever we do the giveaway or something like that. So I do kind of want to change it up to kind of help the people that are actually in the server every day, that are active, that keep the server going and all that kind of stuff. But it's not just for the giveaways. We do customs, we do scrims, we do all types of stuff in the server. So there's a bunch of different reasons to join. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about Rogue first. So I'd done a video before talking about Rogue and the fact that I thought that Rogue might be a strategist simply because it had been leaked from very reliable sources that Rogue was going to be a strategist. Now, the thing is that leakers can be wrong. But, a lot of times leakers, they're just going off of the flow of the game, how things usually work. But the thing that was interesting about the leakers in this game particularly is that pretty much since season 1, since we've gotten Sue Storm, every time that they've brought up a character and what role they were going to be and kind of like an idea of what their power sets were going to be and stuff like that, they've usually been pretty dead on. And there's been very few times where anything has been wrong, but they've always been correct about what their roles were going to be. Now, the thing is that Gambit and Rogue have been being talked about from the leakers for a while now, way before we got to this point in time in the game's lifespan. We're talking about back like in the summer, people were saying that we're going to get Gambit and Rogue, and that they were, Gambit was going to be a DPS and that Rogue was going to be a support. Now, the thing is that obviously Gambit is here now, and he shocked everybody pretty much, with the exception of a few people that are, little Nostradamuses out here that can just predict everything that's going on with Rivals, which I find to be pretty hilarious myself. But nonetheless, though, now that he's here, he's a support, and I don't think that 99% of the community thought that he was going to be a support. I think that most people just assumed Gambit would be a DPS, and there's still a lot of people that, even though they're enjoying him and stuff like that, they're still kind of like, hey, I don't really get why Gambit is a support, even though that there has been a time in the comic where he did have the ability to heal people. That lasted for about 2 seconds, and that's not usually how Gambit is shown in comics and stuff like that. So it makes sense to me from both sides why people would feel that way. Point that I'm making, though, is that I actually believe that Gambit was changed, whether it was a couple of months before or a couple of weeks, whatever. I believe that they basically took his power set that he already had and just added the ability for him to be able to heal, which that's not really that crazy because they could do that with anybody. They rework characters all the time. So it's not to say that once a character exists that you can't go back and change certain aspects of that character. Just look at Thor, Jeff, Penny, just different people and stuff like that, where they've added abilities, taken away some things, changed their ults around, all types of stuff with characters. That's just at the end of the day, a couple of ones and zeros. You're going into a computer and you're changing some stuff around, especially with Gambit's abilities. It seems like he was very DPS heavy. And then they just went back and they just said, hey, you know what? Make it to where when he can also, like, basically he can attack the enemy or he can heal friendlies and stuff like that. Which, like I said, that would be something that would be very easy to change around in the computer. Still, though, point that I'm getting to is that with Rogue, I do believe that Rogue was always supposed to be a support, and they're thinking like, hey, you know what? If people want to keep complaining about supports not having enough supports in the game and stuff like that, and there's an overwhelming amount of DPS, why don't we just go ahead and give them a double DPS season, and then maybe we could have a double tank season, and that might kind of like soothe the community a little bit and stop them from complaining as much and get them off of our backs. And that's just me thinking from the perspective of the developers. If I'm seeing that my community is complaining that there's not enough of certain roles and stuff, and that when we are getting characters in those roles, like for example, Ultron or something like that, and most people are saying the same thing, that Ultron is basically a DPS and support clothing and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it would make sense to just kind of say, here, you know what? Let's just go ahead and change some stuff around really quick ahead of time. Not too much, but enough to where technically these characters can fit this role or whatever the case is. And they've already done it with Gambit, and it seems like people are enjoying it. Now, also, to another thing, I want you guys to let me know in the comments. Did we not get a double DPS season? I could have swore we had a double DPS season with Blade and with Jean Grey. And if that's the case, then, like I said, let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but that's just how I remember it. We've had so many seasons at this point, I've forgotten. And Google's giving me different answers here on that when I looked it up a moment ago. So the thing that I'm trying to get to here is that with that happening, it wouldn't be crazy if we were to get, if they say, hey, you know what, we gave you a double DPS season, so let's give you a double support season, and then maybe next season we give you a double Vanguard season, double tank, whatever, right? That wouldn't be crazy to me. And, the whole thing is that, like I said, I did a poll the other day in the community section, and I was just kind of seeing what people thought Deadpool would be. Now, the majority of people said DPS, and I think for most people, it's just kind of a lack of imagination. They look at the majority of characters in the Marvel Universe, and when you look at most superheroes, like, obviously there's exceptions. You have these heroes that are just really big and really strong, like Thor, Hulk, something like that. But outside of those types of characters, you have to kind of start getting creative in a game like this, kind of like what they did with Gambit. The majority of people, when I asked before, when I did polls or anything like that, the majority of people said DPS. Rogue, DPS. Deadpool, DPS. Daredevil, like, just, and I'm not saying that Daredevil wasn't a DPS, but the point that I'm making is that when you look at like 99% of superheroes, most people are going to say, oh, that's a DPS. They do like these cool things that are like attacking and yada, 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 right? And then, like, if it's not a character that's this, their whole focus is like strength or something, like Superman, even though I know that's DC, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, you have characters like Superman, Hulk, Thor, different people and stuff, where their whole thing is like strength. And if you were to take that away from them, what would they really be superhero wise after that? Obviously, those are going to be tanks, but especially when you start getting into the support role, how many superheroes like are there that, like, their whole thing? And I know there's a lot of superheroes that do have the ability to heal people and stuff like that, but what you have to realistically think about is the fact that NetEase is going to try to start with the characters that are most notable and popular. Most people are not individuals that know the whole entire history of Marvel and collect comics and read all these different stories and stuff like that. There's characters that are like household names, and then there's all the other ones and stuff. Do you get what I'm saying? And the characters that they've tried to release so far are characters that are popular enough for the most part to where the majority of people are going to kind of have some idea of who those characters are. Like I said, for the most part, there have been a few exceptions here and there. And the thing is about it too is that with Deadpool is probably one of the most recognizable and popular Marvel characters at the moment, next to like Spider-Man and a few other people and stuff like that. The Wolverine Deadpool movie, for it being a rated R movie, which Disney probably had to, really sit down and talk about the fact that they were going to do that, because that was them really stepping outside of what their current kind of model is for how they show Marvel characters and stuff, which are far more PG compared to something like DC, where DC is, in my opinion, they kind of take on the role of like the darker, grittier comic storylines and stuff like that for the most part, outside of like, Superman movies and stuff like that. But with Deadpool though, Deadpool is just he's never stopped being popular. Like since he's come out, he's just it's like a snowball effect of popularity with him to the point to where now, anytime that Deadpool is teased to release or be released in any kind of game or anything like that, people immediately are like, man, they're jumping on it. When DC and Marvel just had their like DC Marvel crossover comics and stuff that they only do like every decade, sometimes even longer than that. You know who the person was that they had fight against Batman? Deadpool. Batman is arguably the most popular DC character of all time. And if you're going to sit here and have Batman go up against somebody, it's going to have to be someone who's of like equal popularity on the Marvel side, which is Deadpool. And the thing is that when you're releasing a character that is that popular and that important to the base of people that are going to be playing your game, you have to make sure that you do that character justice on all different levels and aspects and stuff like that. And with us not knowing exactly what role Rogue is going to be. Jesus, that was a little tongue twister right there. But yeah, without us knowing what role she's going to be, it's kind of hard to think about it because let's say that she comes out and she is a tank, right? Well, you already have people that, like I said in this poll the other day, the majority of them said DPS, but there was a lot of people that said tank. It was pretty close in that regard. And a lot of people had a lot of different reasons. Now, one of the main reasons that they were saying that was because they were saying that Wolverine and Deadpool, they both have like the regeneration factor or stuff like that, right? To where you pretty much can't kill them. I mean, Deadpool has been like literally a tiny little piece of gloop that you might have mistaken for a piece of chewed gum on the ground or something, and he's regenerated from that. Wolverine is also known for just being indestructible. But the thing I find funny about that is that these people will say that, and then you look at it, and Wolverine is a DPS. Even though, in my opinion, like if anybody should have been a tank, maybe next to like Hulk or like I always use Hulk and Thor because I feel like they're perfect examples. Thing as well. Next to those, though, if anybody should have been a tank, it definitely should have been Wolverine. But we've seen that NetEase, they kind of, they do their own thing when it comes to stuff like this. A lot of people are always saying, well, if you use logic and reason, yeah, a lot of these people would be tanks and they would be DPS, and we'd have very few people over there in the healer section. But at the same time, like I've said numerous times before, with a game that's a role-based game, a hero shooter, whatever it is that you want to refer to it as, you do have roles, and for the health of the game, you have to make sure that these roles are all equally fun so that people want to do them. There's a lot of people in this game that don't want to play support, but they want to be supported. They want heals, but they themselves don't want to play the heals. They look at it as like, they look down on it. They look at it as the equivalent of, you wash the dishes and I'm going to go out and save the world, right? Like washing the dishes is beneath me. And it's like, brother, I don't care how good you think you are at saving the world. If somebody is not healing your behind, you're going to be out of here. A lot of people don't want to play tank because tank is a hard role. It's I'm not saying that other roles aren't hard, but tank is one of those roles where you are like the captain of your or the quarterback of your team. You're the one that has to be in the front. You have to take the charge. You have to make the really important plays to be able to push the enemy team back and create that space. Peel for people. There's just a lot of different things that you have to do as a tank that a lot of people just don't want to have to worry about. And it's the same thing with support. Support is one of those roles where you're constantly having to deal with being dove and people trying to delete you first before anything to get you out of there, because we already know that when there's no supports, that team fight is pretty much lost at that point, and on the side of the people that have lost the supports pretty much, right? Whereas DPS is kind of like in this middle area, and whenever anything goes wrong, it's very, very easy for DPS to just sit around and kind of blame everybody else and say, oh, well, GG no heals, or GG the tanks were trash, etc. Right? So a lot of people that don't want to play these roles, and you have to make these roles interesting and fun for the health of the game, because if not, it's just a situation where everybody wants to load in and insta-lock DPS. But on the other hand, you have a problem where we haven't really had this with tank. You do have people that will go triple tank if there's like triple support or something like that, because that is a good counter to triple support. But the point that I'm making is that they already know that triple support has been an issue for a while now. And if you start making too many cool supports, then you're just going to have not only triple support, but you're going to start having 4 and 5 supports and stuff. You might even mess around, and which I've done numerous times, and it usually starts out as a joke, but ironically, we end up winning when we have a whole team of supports, right? And now that Gambit is here, I mean, it definitely is far more feasible and stuff like that, especially if you have support players that actually know how to fight back. But you could have it flip around and have the same thing with the tanks and stuff, to where if you create too many cool tanks, then people might just say, hey, why are we even going DPS? We got these tanks that can also go out here and slap folks and stuff like that. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And I really don't envy NetEase on having to be the ones that have to sit back and make sure that there is this level of balance while also making sure that other characters are being balanced and stuff like that. Because with the rate that they're going at, having a new character releasing every month, it's not going to be too long before, in my opinion, it's just going to get out of hand. And I kind of get why games like this don't usually release characters at a ridiculously high frequency. And like I said, this is something that it works now because the game is still like in its infancy. We just had the 1 year anniversary like last week or whatever, however many days ago it was. So there is still this level of like the game being new enough to where they can kind of do that. Like I said, if you keep looking at this progression over a period of time, like even another year from now, that's going to be a lot of characters in the roster. And then, like I said, still trying to give people team ups and buff people and nerf people and make it to where everything is balanced, but you don't just have like half the roster being characters that people don't care about and don't want to use and stuff, especially with it being a live service game. You have to make sure that you cycle things around, meaning that maybe Widow, nobody really cared about her for the first couple of months, but eventually they're going to have to do something with Widow to make people care about Widow. If Namor has been being too aggravating for a couple of seasons, or Hela or something, they're going to have to nerf these characters, but not too much, but enough to where they're not necessarily like being picked every game or being banned every game. You're even having this situation right now with Invis, where Invis, even though she was popular in like really high ranks and stuff, for the most part, most people weren't really using her as much because of certain aspects. And then they gave her one new ability to where she could put her shield on herself. And now she's becoming broken to where people are like, listen, I just can't deal with this. Let's just ban her every game, or, whatever the case is. And if she's not being banned, she's pretty much just running lobbies. I've lost count of how many MVPs I've gotten with Invis this season. And we're not even talking about like low rank games and stuff like that. We're talking about like in against really skilled players and stuff, making it to where dive is just completely pointless because you're not really losing many of your 1v1s against a Sue Storm. A Sue Storm isn't losing most of her 1v1s against most people. But, like I said, the point that I was just making overall is that it is really interesting to me what they're going to choose to do. I am really curious to see what's going to happen with Rogue, what they're going to do. I would love to have a double support season. And I would love to have a double Vanguard season, or, to have, switch it up to where it's maybe like, one support like we had Gambit, then maybe Rogue as a tank. The next season we have a support, but then also you have Vanguard. It's just realistically, I don't see Deadpool or Elsa being supports. Neither one of them do anything that makes me think, oh, they would be supports. And like I said, they're fully aware that there's just more than enough DPS and stuff like that. So like I said, it really is like a rock and a hard place. And I'm fully aware that there's plenty of characters that I didn't initially think would be supports, and they are supports. So like it's not crazy that they could possibly do that with either of those characters. But at the same time, though, like I said, it's all very, very interesting. And I would love to hear from you all in the comments what you think about it, what you think the characters, what roles they're going to have when they do end up coming out. So just let me know in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you all and hear what you all think. This isn't an echo chamber, so just because I have my thoughts and opinions on stuff doesn't mean that that's, at this point, it's all just speculation until NetEase starts dropping the trailers and stuff, and we actually know for a fact what characters are going to be. So that's pretty much all I got for this video, though. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I do appreciate you all for listening. I'm Father Dark, and I'll catch you on the next one.